Hey everybody, welcome to Radio 5G. Um, Today is September 2nd, and we've got a couple of pretty important news items related to 5G and also related to the massive rally in Berlin that you did not hear about on your mainstream media outlets. A million gathering, let's just say it was a COVID awareness slash 5G awareness rally, headlined by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the noted environmental lawyer and founder of Children's Health Defense, and to my mind, a someone who actually embodies the legacy of the best things about that family name that we remember, especially those of us who were actually present on the planet back then. I confess to being one of them, just a kid, a toddler at the time, but it was important to me. So, specifically regarding 5G, and for those of you who've been following the issue and what we've shared here in the last year and a half on Radio 5G, you may be aware that national security concerns are in play regarding the huge Chinese manufacturer of equipment for 5G, Huawei, and that in the UK, in the US, there have been concerns about intelligence gathering apparatus embedded into the 5G technology, which is being widely sold all over the country to various towns, states, municipalities, what have you, where 5G is being rolled out. And of course, heedless of the very well documented harm and damage to human health and to the environment. And that President Trump, there's a couple of news items in regard to that. And we've got something that Nancy's brought to the table here regarding a presidential order. Now you're mentioning that it's legislation, but I'm not sure if it's legislation or executive order. Nancy, shall we share this at this point?
No, these are these are actually, okay, let me go to my notes here. And you might have your mic a little close. We're
Okay.
getting some kind of a
Yeah.
light tap. I don't know what it is.
All right.
Um, okay, this comes from, and I'll put the YouTube, the video up, but this comes from Gene Decode, who is an ex-submariner, U.S. submariner, who has been bringing incredible amount of information to the table. He seems to be very, very connected. Um, he's been talking about the military operations underground in detail. I mean, he went through virtually state by state what was happening in that particular arena. But now, and he's a science, well, you know, he's submariner, you got to have a lot of science behind you. So he put together this, and he has people that are helping him get the information, but he put together this overview because quite a few shows ago I said that there was legislation to prevent the Chinese equipment being put into our equipment because of the fear that they were monitoring everything that went over it. Of course, the Chinese said, "Oh no, 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 they weren't doing that." But to the point that it became it was the virus. You know, it sort of made everybody stand up and look at what the Chinese were capable of doing. Either, well, there was a lot of other things. There were Chinese scientists that had been found, you know, stealing technological information. It was a lot of things that happened, and I think that the first one was in March timeframe, maybe. So what they did was they put together some HR House resolutions In the United States, you've got the Senate and you've got the House. And these are House resolutions, acts that were passed already. The first one, I'm going to not say anything about that because it's kind of confusing. And it gets into another story that I'm going to mention or cover a little bit. Okay, but the big one was H.R. 2881, and it's called Secure 5G and Beyond Act. Now, I sent you a link to sort of an overview, and I think that overview is not the HR itself. What that overview that I want you to kind of read there, Michael, is actually why they did this and a little more. You know, it's not that legalese stuff so much. But do you want to take a look at that?
Are you talking about the fact sheet, the White House fact sheet?
What I'm talking about?
Okay.
Yes,
so
yes,
this is
yes.
dated.
Yes, and
Yeah. So I'll just go ahead and read this then. Okay. So this is dated.
Yeah.
This
Go
is
ahead.
dated March 12th, 2020. Title: President Donald J. Trump is committed to safeguarding America's vital communications networks and securing 5G technology. It opens with a quote: "The security and prosperity of the United States depend on high-speed, reliable, and secure communication networks." President Trump signed new legislation to ensure that our nation's networks are protected from foreign adversaries. He signed the Secure and Trusted Communications Networks Act, furthering his commitment to defend our networks from entities posing an unacceptable risk to national security. This legislation will help protect our telecommunications infrastructure by prohibiting the use of federal funds to purchase equipment from companies that pose a national security threat, in other words, Huawei. The Act creates a reimbursement program to remove and replace equipment in use that was manufactured by entities posing unacceptable national security risk. Provisions of this legislation also help ensure the federal government can share critical information about supply chain security with carriers. These reforms will help protect our nation's vital communications network and also ensures the United States reaches its 5G. And the next generation of wireless technology, 5G, is expected to have vast implications for the future of the United States. Has the potential to transform numerous parts of American society, ranging from artificial intelligence to manufacturing to public services. Using untrustworthy vendors to build communications infrastructure threatens our security by exposing our networks to actors who are potentially influenced by foreign entities. The stakes could not be higher. Citizens and our foreign partners must be able to trust that our 5G networks are reliable, private, and secure. The administration will not risk subjecting America's critical telecommunications infrastructure to companies that are controlled by authoritarian foreign adversaries. A little bullet point they have in here: securing America's future. Trump is building upon his efforts to keep America at the forefront of achieving a safe and prosperous future. Committed to the development of reliable 5G, ensuring the U.S. remains the global leader in technology and innovation. Working with allies and partners on telecommunications security principles that will foster reliable 5G networks. Working to ensure America's private sector has access to spectrum, including critical mid-band spectrum to fuel the growth of our wireless industry. Committed to ensuring that rural Americans are not left behind and that their communities have access to safe and reliable high-speed broadband. President Trump signed an executive order to ensure our information and communication supply chains from foreign adversaries and signed legislation creating the Cyber Security and Infrastructure Security Agency. I guess we should learn that acronym. It would be the CISA, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, to protect our nation's vital critical infrastructure. So there you have it. Sounds good. What do you think? How's it playing out?
Okay, we seem to be having a little bit of we're having a problem with the Skype. You're fading in and out. I was hoping it was going to correct, but it doesn't seem to be. So I think maybe we should reset this call, okay? So I'm just going to you just sit there. I'm just going to close it out and then call
Okay.
you right back, okay?
I'm good.
Are you there?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
Okay. We'll try it again. Okay, so what that all right, yes, the it said that I thought initially it was an executive order, and he did apparently sign an executive order, but then he had the House. Okay, now this was House and Senate. To get this through there, you have to put it through the Senate too. But the thing of it is that okay, when Gene's talking about this, he also goes into another bill that is actually a Senate bill that fast tracked 2881, okay, and 2884 too, but we'll talk about that in a second. But 2881, so they fast tracked it, which means that the president the president signs when both the House and the Senate have passed something. But what they did was they simultaneously introduced both in the House and the Senate the same bill and passed it. They call it fast tracking, so that it was done, not without all the fanfare. So, good Lord, the House and the Senate agreed on something, and this was all, like I say, in the beginning, well, March and in that time frame. Okay, now, boy, this gets so strange. So, the 2884. Now, that is all right. We've got to read this thing, Michael. We've got to read this, and I'm gonna let you try to see if we're gonna be good. Okay, so read that one from the blog about when the president had tweeted
Right.
COVFEFE, COVFEFE,
Yeah.
I guess it's all right. Yeah, give that a now. That's March 20th, 20
Right.
20. The tweet
Yeah.
that baffled the world. You
I'm there.
got it?
This is from the
Okay.
CVine News Network, which stands for Community Voices Investigation News and Education. And this is from March 21st. The tweet that baffled the world. President Trump sent out a tweet on May 31st, 2017, that baffled the world. Those on the left had a heyday with his ignorance of spelling and vocabulary, saying there was no such word, but patriots, understanding his communications, knew something big was about to be revealed. But what and when? What was this new word, COVFEFE? That's C-O, capital V, capital F-E, capital F-E, COVFEFE. The world watched as 5G slowly came into view. Well, I don't know if it was slowly, but would our internet capabilities become like nothing we've ever seen? Since arriving on the scene and being in the microwave I want it now generation, 5G is being welcomed with open arms to give us faster internet capabilities. This technology boasts considerable increased data speed, leaving 3G and 4G in the past. 5G's high-frequency radio waves would present itself to all of our smart devices with faster downloads, etc. On the horizon with 5G are self-driving cars, drone footage, robotic surgeries, etc. Many studies have taken place on how electromagnetic radiation may affect the environment. It concluded this radiation could indeed pose a potential risk to bird and insect orientation and plant health. Then strange videos appeared about dozens of birds dying in the UK, also in the Netherlands. Mainstream media quickly debunked these concerns as, quote, conspiracy, saying 5G was not being tested there at the time. Reporters stated the birds most likely died from pesticides. Yeah, just all of a sudden, en masse, fell from the sky. Ack! Pesticides. We may never know. Test results in regards to human complications with 5G has yet to be determined. That's not really true. So what is COVFEFE and what is the connection? Cobalt, iron, vanadium together make a soft magnetic alloy with the highest flux density of any strip core alloy, making it ideal for use in tape cores and magnetic cores in many innovative technologies. The magnets clean up the impurities from 5G working on an ionic level. This keeps oxygen from being depleted, making harmless the high radio frequency radio waves. Other linear formula names for this compound are FV-CoV, COVFEFE, COVFEFE, VCOVFE, FEVCO, etc. If 5G could be harmful to our environment and all who live in it, that's a big yes. Perhaps COVFEFE is the technology being implemented to protect us from these dangerous microwave levels. President Trump, certainly not in ignorance, always seems to be one step ahead of the game. COVFEFE. And that's from Joe Lynn Live of the CVine News Network. And that's what I get. That's from March 21st, also, which is also
Okay,
the same,
so
around the same time as the White House statement that we read.
Yes. Gotta mute.
yes,
We get a feed.
gotta mute yourself. We get a feedback. Did you mute yourself? Yes, you did. Okay. All right. So, thank you. All right. So now, I remember when this happened because there was a big, oh, that crazy person, Trump, and but there wasn't really any. Somebody said, "Is this a 5G thing? Is this gonna, who knows? But it never really went anyplace until, like I say, I saw this video, and Gene was bringing it up. So, legislation to remove 5G from China, okay, had been secured. Now, what they're talking about with the oxygen situation, okay, at 60 gigahertz is the resonant frequency of the oxygen atom. Okay, 60 gigahertz is the same as the frequency from oxygen. The frequency causes water molecules to oxygen atoms to spin faster, causing increased vibration and heat. So what you've got is you got a top spinning, and then, as we know with the shungite, when the top hits the shungite, if the top is going in the opposite direction, the shungite's so powerful it changes the rotation. That's why we have, attenuation of electromagnetic fields that we're getting hit with when shungite's at play. When you add oxygen that is being hit with something that is moving in the same direction, it's like a swing. You're pushing it faster and faster and faster and faster. So what happens is that it's spinning so fast now, it's actually causing, even though it might be rotating in the same direction, it's causing so much heat that it's causing damage. Okay? So when you got this situation occurring, the first thing is your lungs cannot absorb the amount of water that's being created because of at the ionic or the microscopic molecule level, there's water being created. Because what's water? It's O2, oxygen. What is it? O2. What is water now? H2O. Okay, H2O. So your lungs can't handle it, okay? But then what gets really insane is your body is almost all water. And if you continue to be experiencing this 5G exposure, the water in your body superheats, causing the organs to explode. Just like you see in a microwave oven. If you turn on the microwave and it overcooks an egg, it'll explode. Okay, this is what I mean. I've never seen anybody put it quite that clear. And it's like, oh my God. That's why they have visual video of people walking down the streets of Wuhan and dropping dead with blood coming out of their faces. It's because they had walked into a massive amount of 5G energy. So, what Gene is saying this COVFEFE magnet does, I was on a site where they actually make these things, and they'll make them in any shape you want, or whatever you need to be able to make them. And what he's saying is that the magnet cleans impurities from the 5G signal at that ironic level. Now that doesn't quite make sense to me, because I'm sure it's something to do with the spinning and everything else. But it's being the oxygen depletion and change in the oxygen. Now by depletion, what we mean is that your body can't uptake it into your blood system, okay, because it's not in the form that the body can use. So what is being put on the table is that this particular technology, when you just stick it on a antenna system, a 5G antenna system, the system is now biocompatible. It's not doing this thing with the oxygen. Whether or not this is true, I don't know. I mean, I said that because Michael and I talked about it, and we no, we don't know if this is true or not. But we're storytellers. We're telling you a story. And it's a very, very interesting story, in that if I'm right and the president really does understand this thing, and he's somebody that knows a hell of a lot more than we do, and they do have this fix, why not tell you people? Because again, it's where you focus. If you focus on the fact that, all right, no matter how bad things are, we may be, and I'm not trying to tell you don't try to stop 5G in your cities, but right now they got you so locked down, I don't know if you can even fight that way. And right now you don't have to, because the president and the House and the Senate have passed a bill that says we're not going to use Chinese equipment. And to the best of my knowledge right now, it's only the Chinese equipment that you can get to really build out the 5G system. And I don't think the president, I mean, if we know this, he knows this, the dangers of 5G. He's not a dumb man. He's extraordinarily intelligent. And they say that he constantly is reading, asking questions, trying to find out more and more. So I can't imagine, with all of the information that goes out on 5G, worldwide, that this man does not understand the dangers. So I don't think that he would, assuming he's my guy, would actually put in the 5G as it was built. All right? But if they can make a fix to the 5G, well, hey, we can do it, and we can do it better. We can have Americans building this equipment that will not hurt you.
Well, I would love for that to be true.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
And but let's assume for a moment that it is. What would we be seeing? Just in terms of the news, if that were actually happening, if American companies were stepping up. I mean, the White House statement that we just read off to everybody specifically has a provision in the legislation that they were announcing that reimbursement would be provided for the replacement of existing Huawei technology, in the 5G rollout. So, the whole idea that the U.S. can be self-sufficient in safe communications technology is great, but are we there? Do we have manufacturers who are up to that right now to replace Huawei? And are we seeing any significant slowing of the 5G rollout because suddenly they can't use Huawei? not seeing that. I mean, there was an announcement from Apple yesterday about plans to manufacture immediately 70 million new iPhones, 5G capable iPhones. That was the headline. So, I mean, there doesn't appear to be any slowing of the rollout. Um, so, I don't know. I mean, I'd love for it to be true, just looking for evidence that that's actually what is taking place. And as you say, Nancy, it's hard these days, given, the lockdown. I mean, something like what we helped organize in Taos, New Mexico last June would be impossible today. We had more than 1,000 signatures, which were gathered over a number of days in the supermarket. 300 protesters showed up at the county commissioners meeting where they were looking to change the languaging in the land use regulations to allow a backdoor for rapid implementation of 5G towers. And you get 300 protesters showing up at a county commissioners meeting today that all be arrested. And New Mexico has got a fairly radical governor in place who's got a statewide indoor or outdoor mask mandate, which is, I'm sorry, seeing a biker or a jogger going down an empty country road, impairing their immune system and self deprivation of oxygen with a friggin' mask is just one of the most pathetic things I've ever seen. But anyway, that's New Mexico. That would not be possible these days. That was a very impressive demonstration. So certainly everybody in Taos knows about the dangers of 5G. Is it being slowed down? I mean, are you seeing anything, Nancy?
Okay, I have this button on the microphone that I have to use now that sticks every once in a while. I apologize. Okay, so let's just stand back and okay, so you've slowed down, at least probably stopped. I mean, they had stockpiles of the stuff, but they can't even use it, and they got to take it out of the stuff that it's there now anyway. So you've put a real damper on the rollout of 5G, and I know that people are seeing antenna systems put in different places. I can't tell you whether they're 5G or they're just doing 4G intensification. I can't tell you what's happening out there. But from the standpoint of can you use Chinese equipment, it's the only equipment that I know of that is out there right now. I mean, I'm pretty sure that they've already going someplace else we're going to get to in a second. So, and the reason that I wanted to really cover this is because, no, we can't go to the streets. You would not even be able to set up to have people sign a petition because you'd have to have all these pens. Yes, take that pen, put it over here after you're finished with it. Here's some sanitizer I mean, it would be like, it would be kind of crazy just trying to get the signatures. So, I don't want people to be freaking out that they're doing the 5G when you're not looking and you can't do anything. I'm not saying that they wouldn't have tried. I don't think they can because I think that the powers that really are now have stopped that. But what is really interesting is the reference to 6G that Trump also tweeted about. And everybody went, oh, what's 6G? Okay. Well, 6G is something that has been around. As a matter of fact, I would love to be able to talk to Walt Silva, because Walt's he's out of the picture right now for a little bit. He had a little physical problem he had to deal with, but we were talking about communications, and he went off on this quantum communications, and that in the secret space program they don't use airways. There's no airways out. What are they using? He says it's quantum communications, and he went off on this. He can get very deep in the science, and to be honest with you, I didn't listen. It was like, oh, okay, but now I wished I had, because, well, I'm going to read this to you, and it's from the the work that Gene did off of the video. The final solution is 6G Zeno effect. Now, Zeno is spelled Z-E-N-O effect. And you can Google that and go to Wikipedia and see a whole description about what the Zeno effect is. However, the final solution will most likely be implemented by the 6G sources have said that will use the Zeno effect. This technology uses no signal between units wanting information transfer. Information exchange is instead done with an amazing discovery. When measuring a quantum crystal, it changes it. The same type of crystal will be altered exactly the same, and that can be read anywhere. Okay? So, out of the crystal at the location that you're at, you put in the data. Instantaneously, no matter the distance, this signal will be picked up with every other quantum, crystal. Quantum meaning the molecular structure is identical. Every crystal that is identical to the one you just put the information in will have the information. All right. Now, when I got out of the military, I was still in contact with people that are in agencies that are so secret they're ridiculous. And I was told that they were working on, this is back in like 1976, 77 time frame, that they were already working on the new generation of computers that would be based on computers, on crystals. And that's all I heard. So I've been for, like all this time waiting to see these crystal computers. Well, I think this is what we've been talking about. But if they knew about it and were working on it in the 70s, we used to have a kind of a law that if something came out into the market, it was virtually 50 years. Okay? They are 50 years ahead of what they give you on the market. In this background to everything that happens, they are so. Now, I don't think it's 50 years anymore. In this case, it might be, but it's just happening so fast. But when I was in the military, that was what we accepted, that whatever technological thing you saw, it will, the people behind it were 50 years ahead of what they were giving you. And which seems like a lot now, but back then it seemed reasonable because it was a different time. Time seemed to go differently. But anyway, so you got these crystals. You don't need any connections whatsoever because when it's in one, it's in all. So I was talking to somebody that is very, very deep, one of the insiders over this question just yesterday. And I said, so it's already being used? And he said, yes, it's being used. It is the way that they communicate in space, in the Star Trek universe, quantum computing. It's quantum exchange of information. And I said, and you got to have all these crystals that are identical. And he said, well, in actuality, if you take a crystal, one crystal, and you've put the information in it, and then you shatter it, he said, every shard of the crystal has the information because of the concept of fractal universe. So what I'm saying here is that when Trump got up in front of the world to give his speech in January of 17, he told the world there are technological advancements out there that are stunning, that will revolutionize everything. He said it when he took the oath of office. The man, no matter how you feel about the man, okay, he made many promises before he became president, and he has kept them all. And you can try to debate me on that, but if you look at the facts, what he said and what he's done, most people don't hear it because they're not listening to alternative websites. They're not reading the White House website. They're only listening to, all of the media groups, and they're only giving you what they want to give you. And so much of it, when I watched the Republican convention, I was shocked because of average people talking about specific things that the president had done that made a massive amount of changes in their life. And that included, the right to choose. If you're dying and there's a drug out there that might help you, but it's not been approved, he's given people the right to try it because they're dead anyway. Give you the right to try it. And there was a woman there under Trump, she was allowed to live, young woman, and she just I didn't know he had done that. People getting out of jail. Okay, there's this one woman, and she did some nonviolent drug conviction, and I'm not, maybe she was selling something, right? But it was nonviolent. She got life in 20 years. And this was part of a scheme to take in as many prisoners as you could because they had gone into private prisons. Wasn't it you that told me about the judge that
yeah, there's a judge
had gotten
who
caught
went to prison because he had done a scheme where he'd get paid for every prisoner he delivered to this private prison system by sentencing them. So those prisoners it's slave labor. It's
Right.
basically modern slavery, and the private prison corporations get paid by the government for every prisoner. So that's why the United States, land of the free, has the highest prison population of any country in the world, per capita as well. Just in terms of population. So yeah, it's a pretty grim reality.
Yes, very grim. So, my feeling is that if the president is now talking about 6G, and what I know from the insiders, that this particular, you need to mute, hon, this particular 6G quantum communications is something that they're not going to spend their time trying to dick around with what they wanted to do with 5G. If you're gonna build out a communication system and you've got the best communication you can possibly have that's based on crystals and communication and no pollution and no other things, it's all doesn't need airwaves
Yeah,
and stuff, and that's where you're going to put your money. So my suspicion is that behind the scenes,
well, from your
5G is
mouth to
dead in the
God's
water.
ears, let's really hope that's true. The thing about it is we do know that it already has been rolled out in major cities around the country. It's up and running. In LA, in Denver, in New York, in all the major cities, 5G is there and, hurting people. And who knows, possibly contributing to the COVID spread in those cities as well, because of what we've read about the link, the documented scientific link. So, and if there is, as you say, there's this quantum crystal technology that far surpasses 5G. But yeah, it's like, going from vinyl to cassettes to CDs. Like, oh, let's all leap onto the bandwagon of the new technology, and 5G gets consigned to the dust bin of history, as Ronald Reagan said. But I don't know. I have my doubts, just because it takes an awful lot of in the midst of the lockdown, the economic crisis that came from the lockdown, and everything else that's going on, to dismantle the 5G networks that are already up and running in the major cities, because a new system is coming, but it isn't here yet, or because of, you know,
Well, that's where that COVFEFE comes
okay,
in.
yeah. Now
You
here's something
know,
just
the
to put this in
COVFEFE.
context for people. I've got a
All
little
right.
entertaining clip here about COVFEFE, right? Which is, um, and okay, this is from Stephen Colbert, who is a brilliant comedian who is totally a, pawn of corporate media. I mean, it's just nonstop attacks on Trump. It gets pretty tiresome and obviously slanted. Nevertheless, um, this is Andy Serkis on Stephen Colbert one night, and this is a couple of years ago. Andy Serkis is the famous actor from Lord of the Rings who played Gollum. And there's Gollum is the sort of hobbit-like creature who gets possessed by the ring, and he ends up having a split personality. There's the good Gollum called Smeagol, and then there's Gollum who wants to, kill the hobbits and take the ring. Anyway, so they actually had Andy Serkis come on Stephen Colbert and read Trump's tweet in the character of Gollum. And it's pretty darn funny, and I've got it pulled up here. Are you good with sharing this? Just for it's about a 30-second tweet here. It just will take us all back to when this
Sure,
COVFEFE thing
sure, go
came
for it.
out. Everybody's saying, "What is Trump out of his mind? What the heck is this? This is embarrassing." Anyway, so we'll back this up a little bit. It's going to be about a minute. Here we go. He's going to read two tweets here. Hang on a second. All right, here we go.
Fake news media has never been so wrong or so dirty. Purposely incorrect stories and phony sources to reach their agenda of hate. Sad.
Just you can lose this one. Just that one if you don't mind. Yeah.
Despite the constant negative press, kerfuffle. Wait, what's kerfuffle, precious?
No one knows. That's the most beautiful thing.
So there you go. It's like no one knows, right? But maybe somebody does know.
Well, let me tell you something. Another thing that was on the same video with that Gene put out. Okay, you remember when Trump
Right.
said hydrochloroquine? I think it could be the answer, right? Okay, and everybody went nuts, right? And then you get more and more doctors all over the world saying hydrochloroquine does work and it doesn't have any side effects. And you have the mass media saying, oh, they're all crazy and you're going to kill yourself and don't do it. And I mean, it's like, you go, why are they, what is it with, because Trump said it? Would this cause this backlash because Trump said it? And over in Europe, they're saving thousands of people's lives with this drug over the counter. Are they not wanting it out there because the pharmaceutical companies are, going to lose all this money? Why are they
Actually, there
fighting
is
this? It doesn't
a
make
clear
any
and direct
sense.
reason regarding that, which is you can mandate vaccinations for a pandemic for which there is no known cure or treatment. So they've got to say, hey, no, hydroxychloroquine, no, that does not work, because they will lose billions if there is a treatment that works. That's the law. That's the deal.
And yes, I would agree with that until I listened to Gene, okay? because there's a very, 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 very weird and interesting connection between adrenochrome and hydrochloroquine. And that is, now when we're talking about adrenochrome, and believe me, ladies and gentlemen, this is one of the people who don't understand what's happening around them in the basics freak out over this conversation. I did. And I was very conversant in it. But I just couldn't even imagine this because it's evil incarnate and depravity. That people are essentially drinking human blood in order to live forever, I guess. I'm not exactly sure why they're doing it, but apparently that's their reasoning. And there is too much information for me to dispute. There's too much of it. It's like the Pizzagate. When Pizzagate started up and all this pedophilia, and then I find out 800,000 children disappear in the United States every year. I mean, this is freaky information. And I dismissed it. I said, no, this is not humanly possible. Human beings wouldn't do this. And the atticus keeps coming in, and now they just, another 39 children, were saved in Georgia. So I mean, it's like, were there thousands of people in the I don't know. But there's too much of this information for me to, complete disregard it. And then you get the adrenochrome coming up, and they're drinking blood. What is this? This is so insane. I mean, my God, what is this? But apparently it's true. So, when you are drinking human blood, your body is not capable of effectively eradicating the iron that is in that blood. And what happens is that your kidneys begin to build up with the iron and then malfunction. It's a toxic environment, and the kidneys begin to fail. If you take hydrochloroquine, you will die immediately because your kidneys are in that condition if you have been on adrenochrome. So are they terrified of this being, you go to the hospital, you're sick, they said you got COVID, you've also been a junkie on this blood, and you know that they're going to give you hydrochloroquine and it's going to kill you. Is that it? I mean, there's, these things just come together in these weird patterns, Michael. What is it?
Well, my favorite phrase, more will be revealed. Because that one. Yes. Oh, more will be
I don't
revealed,
want
my
to know
children,
anymore.
after this
Please
commercial break.
stop.
Yeah. It's beyond comprehension. And the thing that I am always trying to monitor for my own understanding, so that I get some idea of what is credible and what's not, what I can make a solid conclusion about, and what needs to be dismissed, because it's an indisputable reality. It's a documented counterintelligence tactic for every intelligence agency in the world to, co-opt the opposition and to seed disinformation to discredit your opponents. So the truth movement, the freedom movement, the Restore the Republic movement, you go out there on the alternative web, alternative journalism, there's a lot of good, solid information, and it is well mixed with disinformation designed to make us look stupid and foolish and gullible, right? And how to make something outlandish sound plausible. And the thing is, so many utterly, unbelievably outlandish and horrible things turn out to be true, like this, that we're talking about here, because I know from personal experience, it's one thing to read an article online or to see some interview with somebody. Maybe it's fake news on one side, propaganda on the other. Maybe it's deliberate disinformation. Okay, you try to make your best judgment. But it's a different thing when somebody you know personally, as I do, as I know a survivor. I know several survivors of the pedophilia rings. In this case, the elite pedophilia rings in Europe for this woman when she was a child. And, hearing her tell me of watching a friend of hers, and she's about 12 years old, watching a friend of hers die in these satanic ceremonies. And when she tells me and this is a spiritually mature woman who has done amazing recovery work over the last decades, is outspoken about the reality of the pedophilia rings, is, taking significant risks to step out there. When she tells me that someone she knows in California was moving up in the elite, was being roped into, okay, well, if you're really going to be part of us, you'll be part of this. And that he played along, and when it came to it, to going to an event that he knew would involve murder of a child, that something in him snapped. He could not bring himself to go. But once you've said, yes, I will go, I will be there, I will participate, and you don't show up, that you have just placed yourself in very significant danger. So he faked a nervous breakdown. Probably didn't need to fake it. He actually had one, and got himself confined to a mental hospital in order to protect himself because of what he knew he would have to participate in. So, for me, this is where I am able to, in my own world of evidence, doubt, skepticism, information, who do I know, what's real, what's not, where I can say, I know this is real. I know this is true. Plus, I have witnessed in my own work with people going through processing deep trauma. I have witnessed people reliving these satanic abuse ceremonies. That's not just abuse, murder, torture. So, it's the last thing in the world I want to look at. I have a very limited capacity for exploring it or discussing it. Eleni, for example, just, has gone down that rabbit hole and has a lot of, information. And I just sometimes I just have to say, well, that's as much as I can take today. And we can't pretend that it doesn't exist. That, as you say, it is it's evil incarnate. That is essentially what it's about. So that much I can state unequivocally, I am convinced is real. Now, the idea of hydroxychloroquine counteracting, interacting with adrenochrome in such a way that if some of these people get COVID, they're screwed because the only cure is going to kill them because of, well, that's kind of the beauty of karma, I guess, given what they appear to have been up to. Anyway, I don't know if that helps illuminate anything or not, but I thought I'd share that.
I appreciate that. Yes. When Gene was going through this information, he was reading from a scientific document regarding adrenochrome and what it was doing to the body, and they gave the statistics. I'll have that linked down below too. They gave the the specifics as to how the hydrochloroquine can do this, what it is. So it was a scientific thing, and to listen to Gene present some of the information that he presents, he's on a station that is a Christian station, and he's very oriented to the belief that this is a battle between good and evil. And he calls on God very often. He goes to Scripture very often. And one of the things that makes me think he's probably real is it's like, and God just starts you down a trail, and all of a sudden you got all this more information, and he said, but this, I got to tell you this, and then that's, he's presenting this concept of, adrenochrome, and it just feels real to me, Michael. When they talk about this, and it does answer certain questions. Yes, we can talk about the pharmaceutical companies. I mean, another thing that you'll get a weird commercial out there from alternative to Trump people saying that Trump is going to match your socialistic, and I don't even know what it is about the money concerning the pharmaceutical companies. What he's done is people are going to have drugs that are, a third of the cost of what they're paying now. Because what he's done is he said, look, we're your number one customer, and yet we pay more than anybody else. This doesn't make sense. So we'll make a deal with you. We will pay the same amount for the same drug that any other country does, but we're going to take the lowest price. That's the price we will pay. And he's done it through, I believe he's issuing proclamations, presidential decree, orders, what do they call it? Executive orders. Executive orders for that. So the pharmaceutical companies are going absolutely berserk, and they're putting out these ads that are, oh, Trump is after, it's going to cost you more. No, they're after you. And he said, I must be doing something right because the pharmaceutical companies are going after me.
To me, that's significant because traditionally the Republican Party is the party of corporate power. Now, the Democrats pretend that they're the party of the people, where they're just as compromised and bribed as the other side. It's both sides of the aisle, right? So if it's true that, that Trump is in fact, providing a means for just middle-class folks, to be able to have access at reasonable prices to, to medicines that the pharmaceuticals want to charge them an arm and a leg for, that'd be great. Then hats off to him if he's doing that.
He's done it. It's already in play. The prices, people should be starting to feel the prices before the election. Let me put it to you that way. They timed this just in the nick of time. But So, but like I say, the man does things, and we don't hear about it unless you're, kind of like following,
it's
very
like you gotta
closely.
Watch C-SPAN, and you gotta read every document that comes out of the White House, because you're sure not going to hear about it on MSNBC or CNN. Hey everybody, Michael Henry Dunn here with Nancy Hopkins. Welcome back to Radio 5G for the second hour of revelations, speculations, and transfigurations. Something like that, right? So, and storytelling. It's all about storytelling.
And storytelling.
So we just had Andy Serkis as Gollum. Sharon COVFEFE with us. Do we want to go there now? Do I want to segue to that, or had you finished where you?
No, I'm finished. We can go into. I'd like to hear about the people that went to Berlin with the Kennedy.
Let me read something to you. Now, this comes from a friend of mine, who's a pretty remarkable gentleman in and of himself, and I'd love to have him on as a guest at some point, my friend Bart in Belgium. But he received this report from a friend of his who attended the massive rally in Berlin it's sort of a COVID awareness rally, but also with 5G being exposed. And this is from a woman named Luna Vestidik, who it sounds as if she herself is Dutch, and she journeyed to Germany to attend. And so there were 1 million people, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. gave, by all accounts, a remarkable speech at the very place in the center of Berlin where his uncle, President John F. Kennedy, gave the very memorable, really immortal speech. This is shortly after the Berlin Wall had been put in place. So Berlin at that time was deep in the territory of East Germany. And yet because of a post-war treaty, Berlin itself had, each of the allies had a sector. So the British, French, and American sector became West Berlin, became an island of freedom surrounded by Soviet domination, totalitarian domination, tanks, etc. And so, flourished right on, through 1989 and the fall of the Berlin Wall. But at that time in 1961, as far as John F. Kennedy was concerned, it was the one place where freedom in the Cold War there was a light there, deep, behind the Iron Curtain in East Germany. And even while they were trying to conclude a treaty with the Soviet Union, a nuclear test ban treaty, Kennedy couldn't help himself when he went to Berlin and he saw all these people gathered, and he needed to give them hope. He needed to salute their courage because they were being cut off from the West, and the Allies dropped supplies for them by airlift. And that's when Kennedy gave his very memorable speech. One quote from it is, in the world of freedom today, the proudest boast is, Ich bin ein Berliner. I am a Berliner. Now, ironically, actually, his translator should have told him, Mr. President, if you want to say I'm a Berliner, you should say Ich bin Berliner. That's how it's said in Germany. It's not Ich bin ein Berliner, because what that means in the vernacular is I am a Sunday pastry. So, because there's a Sunday pastry called a Berliner. Anyway, I'm sure the Berliners forgave him, but it was a very inspiring and legendary speech. So his nephew, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who has, decades of very impressive achievements as an environmental activist, lawyer, the founder of Children's Health Defense. He and his organization are extremely thorough and careful about their evidence, about their investigative journalism. And if you want to find or share with your friends a place where solid investigative journalism and solid science backed up by, peer-reviewed journals from around the world, go to children'shealthdefense.org. So Robert F. Kennedy Jr. addressed this crowd. Now I'm going to read to you folks this eyewitness from this rally, which, 1 million people gathered. You heard nothing about it on mainstream. And the rally itself, the authorities tried to close it down. They tried to prevent it. And at the last minute, a judge allowed it to go ahead. So here it is. Excuse me. Berlin. Yes, I was there. At the big demonstration in Berlin yesterday, I was there for my kids and grandkids, for all my friends who are young enough to have another beautiful life ahead of them. It was very exciting at first, especially given the unpredictable violence that has been applied a few times in the Netherlands, but I felt I had to go, and I had 2 of my kids with me. We were there all day, from the beginning to the end. Through social media, we heard that the event was canceled, then lifted, ended, or whatever. It's not true. We've been everywhere, from Unter den Linden via Brandenburger Tor through the entire park to the beautiful Statue of Liberty, Siegessäule, the impressive large column with the radiant Victoria Goddess of Victory on top. At least 1 million people and probably much more. It was so impressive. I don't love big crowds myself, but this felt very okay and safe all day long. There was a super good atmosphere, peace everywhere, and people were happy and relaxed. Police were there to guide and protect people. Military intelligence was walking around watching things. The organization had provided enforcers itself. A deaf interpreter, sufficient toilets, large projection screens everywhere, an aerial platform who filmed everything, and a drone to count the people. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. made a magnificent speech from the stage. Truly nothing going on, everything is going well, and the organization itself says it's over at 20 hours, 30 hours, whatever that is. I believe that's 8:30. All people going home quietly and neatly, nobody leaving a mess behind, everyone helping each other. The mainstream message of everything is just not true, and focuses on infiltrators and a few riots caused by the counterparty, neo-Nazis, walking around in groups out to hijack and ruin the demo. I was there from start to finish and in all places. Then you can experience what amazing lies are being spread, and I am glad that I was there. So that is an eyewitness account from Berlin, from a woman named Luna Westerich, that was shared through my friend on Facebook. So it's pretty astonishing, that the mainstream media can be so brazen in their ignoring what, if that had been a Black Lives Matter rally with 1 million people, it would have been all over everywhere. And, I'm just go on record for me personally, I am very well aware of what the genuine issues and outrage that people feel, from the George Floyd story and the way that, horrible incident awoke natural outrage in people. And I'm also very well aware of how it's being used politically, the divisive tribalizing of American society. That this, who benefits in the end? Who benefits? That's where I go for my conclusions about what's really going on there. But people gather, and one of the most famous names in American political history, giving a very powerful speech in this legendary place where JFK gave that legendary speech, and to have zero coverage of it. What does that tell you, folks? I mean, to me, right there, that's where they don't want you to look is where we need to look. Anyway, that's the update.
I just, I didn't have time to look at anything in depth. Did you go over to the Children's Defense Fund's website to see if there was any
I sure did.
more information
I sure did,
that
and
they
I've got
were
an
presenting?
article
Because
from Children's Health Defense. Sure.
Can we
Sure,
hear
here we
that
go.
one? I'd like, because the things I did see that came up on Facebook, which was about the only thing I had time to even look at. I mean, I'm just seeing the postings, the titles, but it was Bobby talking about vaccinations and something about the lockdown, but it wasn't He wasn't focused on the vaccinations, you're saying.
Yeah, well, no, he was. Let
What was his
me
speech?
read it. And I've just shared a link. This is from children'shealthdefense.org. And the
Okay.
article from a couple of days ago, August 29th, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. speaks at Berlin Rally for Freedom and Peace. I'll read from this. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. spoke to hundreds of thousands in the streets of Berlin with Große Square and the Siegessäule Monument as a backdrop. Mr. Kennedy talked about government control by fear and spoke out against totalitarianism. He said the government and those with the greatest wealth and control have done a terrible job on public health and will shift us all to 5G and a cashless society. He said that 5G is being pushed on us as a good thing, but it will be used for surveillance and data harvesting. Mr. Kennedy added that the COVID-19 pandemic is a crisis of convenience that is destroying the middle class, impoverishing us all, and is making the powerful elite even more powerful. He closed with the message that we must protect our fellow man, our vulnerable children, and our freedoms and democracy. And that this is Senta Depute, officer of the New Children's Health Defense Europe chapter. This is the introduction of Mr. Kennedy. Dear friends who came from all over Europe, today we are here to give the world a powerful message. Humanity cannot and will not longer be ruled by a model based on threat and control. Right here, right now, we can refuse all this. Right here, right now, we can change the narrative. We can create our new normal. We keep hearing the words solidarity, compassion, and equal rights in the mouths of politicians who try to separate and divide us. People who order fines, isolation, experiment on our health, and restrict all our freedoms. These people are not philanthropists. They ask us to believe in a new religion called the scientific consensus, a fabricated dogma used by a corrupt caste called experts who serve no other than their own interest. Tracking and tracing are the tools of this Inquisition. We know where this ultimately leads us: isolation, punishment, and slavery. We can choose to see things as they are, with the dangers and the opportunities they bear. I believe history has given the German people this capacity and this responsibility. So I have some very good news to share, because today I'm surrounded by brave people. I'm standing next to a man who is literally catching snakes with his bare hands. Yes, watch it on Instagram. Rattlesnakes hiding in the bushes of the California valleys. And also more poisonous species who produce toxic drugs and pesticides and experiment them on humans and nature. This man acts with courage, passion, service, and faith. That is true leadership, the capacity to inspire others by one's actions. That is what the Kennedys have done. That is their legacy. And today, this man meets other men and women with the same values. All of you here who have come to show your true courage, your true solidarity, your true humanity. All of you who individually and collectively are peacefully manifesting your sovereignty. I will call you all Berliners. And as a European, as a mother, as an individual asking for the respect of my human rights, I say that I am proud to be a Berliner. Children's Health Defense Europe wants to become a Berliner Alliance. Thank you so much for joining us. Grazie a tutti per la vostra presenza. Hartelijk dank voor jullie aanwezigheid. Merci à tous de votre présence. Gracias por su presencia. Vielen Dank für Ihre Anwesenheit. Forgive me, that's my attempt to speak French, Italian, Spanish, Dutch, and German. She is saying thank you so much for joining us. And there's pictures accompanying this article overhead, pictures of Berlin showing vast throngs gathered in this legendary place in this park by the statue where Robert Kennedy Jr. gave this speech. And this is from the Children's Health Defense.org website, and I encourage everybody to go there and to watch Mr. Kennedy's speech, which, in fact, let's play a little bit of this, Nancy. You good with that? Mr. Robert Kennedy?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you very much for listening, learning, and being here with us, fighting for freedom and for a better world. Thank you. Back at home in the United States, the newspapers are saying that I came here today to speak to about 5,000 Nazis.
Zu Hause in den Vereinigten Staaten behaupten die Zeitungen, ich wäre hierher gekommen, um mit 5.000 Nazis
It's being repeated in German after he speaks.
And tomorrow, you're going to report that yes, I was here and I spoke to maybe 3,000 to 5,000 Nazis.
Und morgen werden Sie genau das berichten, dass ich zu etwa 83 bis 5.000 Nazis geredet haben werde.
But I look at this crowd and I see the opposite of Nazism.
Und wenn ich mir den Menschen schaue, hier ist das Gegenteil der Nazis.
I see people who love democracy.
Ich sehe Menschen, die Demokratie lieben.
People who want open government.
Menschen, die eine offene Regierung wollen.
People who want leaders that are not going to lie to them.
Menschen, die Führung haben wollen, dass sie nicht belogen werden.
People who are not leaders who will not make up arbitrary rules and regulations to orchestrate obedience of the population.
Wir wollen keine Anführer, die wahllos irgendwelche Regelungen erlassen, um unsere Krieg oder unsere Unterwürfigkeit zu erwirken.
We want health officials who don't have financial entanglements with the pharmaceutical industry, who are working for us and not for pharma.
Wir wollen Anführer, die keine Verbindung mit der Pharmaindustrie haben, die für uns arbeiten, nicht für die Pharmaindustrie.
We want officials who care about our children's health and not about pharmaceutical profits or government control.
Wir wollen Politiker, die sich um die Gesundheit unserer Kinder kümmern und nicht um den Profit der Pharmaindustrie und ihren eigenen Profit.
I look at this crowd. I see all the flags of Europe. I see people of every color. I see people from every nation, every religion, all caring about human dignity, about children's health, about political freedom. This is the opposite of Nazism.
Wenn ich mir anschaue, der Krankenhaus aller Herrenländer in Europa, ich sehe Menschen aus allen Nationen, mit allen Hautfarben, in allen Religionen. Ich sehe Menschen, die sich um Menschlichkeit kümmern, die hier sind, wegen der Gesundheit ihrer Kinder und wegen Freiheit und Demokratie.
Governments love pandemics.
Regierungen lieben Pandemien.
They love pandemics for the same reason they love war.
Und die lieben sie aus den gleichen Gründen, wie sie den Krieg lieben.
Because it gives them the ability to impose controls on the population that the population would otherwise never accept.
Weil es ihnen die Lage versetzt, Kontrollen über den zu installieren, die wir sonst niemals akzeptieren würden.
Create institutions and mechanisms for orchestrating and imposing obedience.
Das sind Institutionen und Mechanismen, die unsere Unterwürfigkeit erfordern.
Now I'll tell you something. It's a mystery to me. And all of these big important people like Bill Gates and Tony Fauci have been planning and thinking about this pandemic for decades. Planning it so that we would all be safe when the pandemic finally came. And yet, now that it's here, they don't seem to know what they're talking about.
Und wir wissen mittlerweile, dass heute mit Bill Gates und Anthony Fauci diese Pandemie seit Jahrzehnten geplant haben, die sie jetzt über uns gebracht haben. Und wir wissen inzwischen, dass wir das nicht mal erklären können, was die Pandemie sein soll.
Making it up as they go along. They're inventing numbers. They cannot tell you what the case fatality rate for COVID is. That's basic. They cannot give us a PCR test that actually works. They have to change the definition of COVID on the death certificates constantly to make it look more and more dangerous. The one thing that they're good at is pumping up fear.
Die denken sich alles nur auf, sie erfinden Zahlen. Sie erfinden Zahlen zur Pandemie, damit wir in die Angst kommen. Sie erfinden diese Zahlen, die wir in der Zeitung lesen, im Fernsehen sehen. Und wenn wir die Zahlen sehen, kommen wir einfach nur in die Angst.
75 years ago, Herman Goering testified at the Nuremberg trial. And he was asked, how did you make the German people go along with all this? And he said, it's an easy thing. It's not anything to do with Nazism. It has to do with human nature. You can do this in a Nazi regime. You can do it in a socialist regime. You can do it in a communist regime. You can do it in a monarchy and a democracy. The only thing a government needs to make people into slaves is fear. And if you can figure out something to make them scared, you can do anything you want.
Yeah.
Hey, Michael. I think we've had enough of it because it's not as clear. Well, I don't know. Other people might be hearing it clear, but I'm not. And I think there's a fade in and out on the Skype thing. So, but I really was into the energy of it. That was an amazing, and to see the picture that we've got up here, did I put that? Yeah, I already put the link up. But to see how many people are there, I mean, photograph just in that one little section, and the energy, I mean, wow. I'm going to listen to the thing when, I've got time to listen to it directly.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
thank you for sharing that.
I'm very inspired just watching it, listening to it, and I will look for a transcript because you can see how inspired he is. He's looking out at this vast crowd, and my impression is of a man who realizes that his whole life's work and the legacy of his family, of his father who was murdered, of his uncle who was murdered, of his cousin who died under suspicious circumstances, the entire legacy of his family, his father, and his own life's work as an environmental activist lawyer and as the founder of Children's Health Defense in this crisis has come to this moment in this historic place with 1 million people gathered, that he is speaking the truth from his gut, from his soul, from his heart. Okay, here he is. He's in his early 60s. To hell with it. I'm laying it all on the line, speaking the truths that, we'll get. Yes, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. labeled a conspiracy theorist, right? One of, the most careful, diligent environmental lawyers in the country for decades, with the legacy of his family name to carry. And to me, this is why, I put this out on Facebook. First response, somebody I know in LA, did she listen to the speech? Did she check out the evidence? No. All she said was, oh yes, well, his own family came out against him. Okay, so Joseph P. Kennedy II, his brother, and that's the guy who got caught having seduced the family babysitter and got voted out of Congress, that guy, came out and said, we love our brother, our cousin, Robert F. Kennedy, but we think he is sadly misguided in his stance against vaccines. Okay, right there, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. doesn't have a stance against vaccines. He freely acknowledges the appropriateness of vaccines in certain applications. Everyone wants to say, oh, if Jonas Salk had, been around, and Kennedy had had his way, there wouldn't have been all the millions of children saved from polio. BS. No, that is not what he says. This is called the straw man argument. When you want to knock somebody down, you distort their position into something that everybody would recognize as absurd and tear him down on that basis. And his own brother. To me, that is as foul a betrayal as you're likely to find. Maybe you could just keep your mouth shut. Maybe you could just say, oh, my brother and I have a different. Made a public statement attempting to discredit his brother, who's been like decades of well-recognized, diligent, careful activism as a lawyer. So shame on you, Joseph P. Kennedy. So this is where people go. People who do not want their comfortable worlds disturbed by uncomfortable facts. Oh, his family came out against him. Okay, well, you will not find. I mean, it brings to mind a quote from John Lennon. I think Lennon said, "Speaking the truth may not win you a lot of friends, but it will win you the right ones." So anyway, this is a historic moment. You can bet that the million people in Berlin and all of their friends and all of their relatives and all of their social networks and all of their Facebook friends, multiply each of those million people by like 10 or 20 based on their networks, the vibration, the waves are going to spread out, ripple out across the world from that event. And the plain, brave truth that he spoke, it's kind of irresistible. I mean, they would love to be able to quash it. We've ignored it. Nobody's going to pay attention because it wasn't on Fox or CNN or MSNBC. Sorry, folks. Humanity still has its own irresistible momentum for freedom. So anyway, God bless him. He's not perfect. He's not a saint. They can bring up all this stuff about the Kennedys as womanizers, and JFK and RFK were compromised by Hoover and the FBI. I know all that. I've read all that history. And they stood up for freedom. They both stood up for civil rights. And they both paid the ultimate price. And they knew the risk they were taking. You think RFK didn't know the risk he was taking after his brother was murdered? Anyway, God bless you, RFK Jr. and Children's Health Defense. So
now it seems like he did get into, because he started talking about Fauci, that he did get into the pan.
Right,
I don't want to say
pan of
that,
sausages,
worldwide event thingy was
yeah.
Right. We do have issues about staying up, but I don't think we've been over the line here in this show, so let's not go there. But that they also do you know if they also got into the craziness of the
yeah,
lockdown?
Essentially, and I haven't listened to the whole speech, and I will again. The quote that this crisis of convenience that they have used to destroy the world economy, to limit our freedoms. And he declared that the virus is a crisis of convenience that is destroying the middle class, impoverishing us all, and is making the powerful elite even more powerful. So Yeah, he laid it on the line, and he specifically called out Fauci and Gates for the very long-term planning. They had been waiting for this moment and planning for it. And one of the most powerful things he said was, they love pandemics for the same reason they love war, because it gives them an opportunity to exert control people would never otherwise accept, to extend their power in a way that people would never otherwise accept, to maximize their profits. The vaccine profit machine along with the war machine is the same sort of dynamic, to maximize their profits in a way that people would never otherwise accept. And he said, you can do it in a democracy, you can do it under fascism, you can do it under a monarchy, you can do it under communism, you can, all you need. And he said, and he was quoting Hermann Goering at the Nuremberg trials. He's saying this in Berlin in front of an audience, mostly Germans, saying, they asked Goering, how did you get the people to go along with Nazism? He said, it wasn't that they love Nazism. All you have to do with any country in any place is to make people sufficiently afraid. So that the weapon is fear. And I mean, that's, and there was just a huge roar of from the crowd to hear that truth spoken in that place. It's so that's the bottom line, and that's what we see happening. And he named it. So that's what they're really good at. That's what they've been working on. That's what the corporate media is beating, that drumbeat. Now, there's an interesting thing that that just came out, which might just hint at a shift going on, right? Which is, let's see if I can pull it up here, that the New York Times actually came out with with information about I'm sorry, I'm just catching up on it here. I'm trying to find the exact place. With information that came out regarding the testing, regarding the unreliability of the testing, and how it is, to have the New York Times, which is basically the official organ. Here it is. This is something from that came out in the New York Times, right? Here's the latest science on the PCR swab test for COVID. And this is written by a scientist. So, all right, you got to believe the science. Everybody's saying, okay, so the whole scam just fell apart. The test, the overwhelming number of false positive. According to the New York Times, potentially 90% of those who have tested positive have such insignificant amounts of the virus present in their bodies that such individuals do not need to isolate, nor are they candidates for contact tracing. That's 90%, folks. Leading public health experts are now concerned that over-testing is responsible for misdiagnosing a huge number of people who have harmless amounts of the virus in their systems. Most of these people are not likely to be contagious. And that's what the New York Times is confessing on August 29th. Quote, some of the nation's leading public health experts are raising a new concern in the endless debate over testing in the U.S. The standard tests are diagnosing huge numbers of people who may be carrying relatively insignificant amounts of the virus. Most of these people are not likely to be contagious. In 3 sets of testing data, compiled by officials in Massachusetts, New York, and Nevada, up to 90% of people testing positive carried barely any virus, a review by the Times found. So this test is so sensitive that it picks up inconsequential, tiny, tiny amounts of virus that couldn't harm a flea, and it calls these amounts positive. And so how does this get played out in the media? 90% of these tests showing people who have tiny, tiny, tiny amounts. It tells you 1 million new cases of CV in the US last month. These aren't cases. These are not people who are contagious or symptomatic. These are people who have tested positive with a test designed to be so over the top sensitive that will pick up inconsequential tiny amounts that these people are not infected, they are not contagious. What does it serve? Fear. It serves the thing that gets people to surrender their freedoms. That's what it serves. So, and that's the New York Times, folks. Okay, it's not InfoWars. It's not Nancy Hopkins and Michael Henry Dunn, those firebrands on Radio 5G. That's the friggin' New York Times. So draw your own conclusions.
Well, yeah, it's all falling apart, the pandemic thing. Okay, so let's just step back here and think about what's happened in the last, 18 months, maybe a year. Okay, so they're rushing 5G at us. And God gives us Mark Steele. Now, why would I say that? Well, because there were people like myself that understood the dangers of 5G, and I'm just a layperson, and there were scientists that absolutely were screaming about the dangers of 5G. And nobody would listen because the mass media has gotten to a point that they just disregard. They're underestimating how much information people are actually gathering and digesting, and maybe they just can't. They're at a point that there's so much information out there they can't stop the it's like a dam that's breaking, but the idea that Mark is somebody special is because his job in life was to build the exact same things that we've got into the 5G systems, specifically the one that is used for surveillance, the one that can see through concrete and steel into homes and watch everything. All right, because 5G is a layered system. It's not just communications. It's got all these other thingies attached to it. But Mark was a guy that had, he's been certified by 2 different judges in Great Britain to be an expert on this subject. He saw the antennas and knew there was something weird about them. And then that started his life down the real windy rabbit hole. So if you look at and I'm just focusing on Mark, because if you look at different people and who showed up, and it was almost like there was a whole bunch of people that were destined to get involved in aspects of saying, no, you people, wake up. But then they started waking up in droves. So they tried to do the 5G to keep, basically, we were making a lot of noise, and so they're rushing it to silence us and silence the people we're talking to. And so they rushed that in, and all it did was it made our point. When you see birds falling out of the sky because they turned on a 5G system, or you see cities in South Korea burst into flames because they've turned on a 5G system, this is real world facts that are now supporting what we've been claiming. How would 5G kill you? You give a description of it, and then they come up with something that looks just like that, and they call it something else, and they put the fear of God in you. Okay, and now that's blowing up in their faces. And more people, 1 million people last weekend, came together to say, hey, enough's enough. All right, so they're waking up even faster. So be prepared. They're running out of options. So I suspect that if they can, the next thing that they'll throw at us is an invasion from outer space.
Yeah, I've heard that scenario, and there are a number of warnings from decades ago that would be the ultimate control move, because again, so we've seen how um, everything they do on that scale is, in the short term, effective and terrifying, and in the long term, blows up in their faces. In the long term, their cleverest, most ruthless moves end up blowing up in their faces and exposing them. If you want to talk 9/11, I'm sorry, too many people have watched the video of Building 7 collapsing. Too many people, and a lot of people on that date, 9/11, in the military and intelligence community, who were not in whatever information silo you had to be to realize something of what was going on, they watched those towers fall and they said, that's controlled demolition. And these are patriots. And they quietly began to make alliances. They'd probably been doing it for years already, those who knew what was going on behind the scenes. And that was a huge wake up. It gave them the Patriot Act in the short term. It gave them, the war on terror. It gave them trillions of dollars in profits for the war machine in the invasions of Iraq and everything that followed. And in the long run, it woke up millions and millions of people. Same thing is happening with 5G and with the virus. It's their desperation move, and it's blowing up in their face. So, I don't doubt, Nancy, that you're right, that in terms of they have the technology to maybe pull off something that looks like, an alien invasion. And so instant martial law, and then, the reverse engineered technology they've got with their own lower level UFOs going around killing millions of people whom they couldn't kill with the virus or other means. That's the scenario. I hope it doesn't go there. I don't think that is going to.
Let me interrupt you because
Right.
This sounds absolutely preposterous, correct? Why? Oh my God! All right, back in June of 1963, President Kennedy established a group of people, very, very talented, very, very certified people, on a project, and the project was to determine what would happen if there was not war in the society. If you just ended all wars, what would happen? He was assassinated a few months later. But the committee continued, and this is the Committee of Iron Mountain, and the report is a report from Iron Mountain. It's an official government document. And in there, it's actually a brilliant analysis of society, and it's not very long, of society and all of the different, let's say, elements that go to comprising civilization. From the fact that when you have these wars, you cull out a good portion of the lower human being, because you get prisoners and people that have nothing else to do, and so that they hey, you call out the population, you make it a better humanity. I mean, this is the way they analyze things. From an economic standpoint, they had options to put different ways of keeping the economy going without the war machine feeding it with funds. But they were really kind of like, but this doesn't seem to work here either. But the main thing that they concluded was that without war, you don't have fear. Without fear, you don't have control. So they suggested that the only option that worked, and they give a lot of reasons for it, but their conclusion was that if you wanted to maintain society in a, quote, good way, you have to maintain control. And if you're not going to have wars to frighten people, to allow governments to have all this policing capability, policing in the streets of civilians and military might, you don't have control. However, if you had an invasion from outside the earth, well then, yeah, then we could do it. Then we could get them under control and blah, blah, blah. An official government document that they've already said. Ultimate control, if you need to go for it. Let's have an invasion. And I believe, I might be making this up, but I think they actually indicated that this could be manufactured. That it didn't have to be real.
From Henry Kissinger along these same lines, in which he is saying, that ultimate control can be ours. I'm paraphrasing here. Given an emergency, whether real or promulgated. Promulgated means just essentially being, let's put this out there as if it's real. And the fact that he would, have the cojones to, just say that, right? To make widely known. We're just making this widely known. It doesn't matter if it's real. We're just going to make it widely known. So what would it take to get a large portion of the world's population to believe in an alien invasion? Well, first of all, there would need to be an actual attack from, actual UFOs with lethal technology. And preferably in some place like, New York or Chicago or Berlin or Tokyo or wherever, right? But to me, the telltale signs of a false flag, are that the media coverage is far too ready, far too prepared, far too, emotionally manipulative immediately. You could see it with 9/11. So that, okay, why now? After all this time, off-planet races have been running around this planet for probably centuries, if not thousands of years. And so now, all of a sudden, they decided, hey, let's take over. Let's take over this, miserable planet of warring, ignorant, savage people compared to us. And, because that way we can harvest what? We can take over Disneyland. We can, get to go on Splash Mountain. We get to take all their corn. We want their gold. What can they get that they're not already able to get? The water.
They want the water.
Okay, the water.
You don't
whatever
watch
the
enough
reason is
sci-fi.
promulgated.
They're always after the
It's
water.
like that old. You probably remember that old. Maybe it was Outer Limits, or maybe it was the Twilight Zone. Where the aliens come down, and they seem to be benevolent, and they get a hold of some document belonging to the aliens, and they're trying to decode it, and the aliens are going, "We are here to bring peace and plenty. You come with us to our planet, and all will be well." And they're furiously trying to decode the document, and they get halfway decoding it, and that they said, "We've decoded the title. The title is To Serve Man." How beautiful. It's a document about how they're going to serve humanity. And at the end, as everybody's being lined up to get onto the spaceships, the one decoder desperately trying to call out to his girlfriend and says, "Stop, stop. To Serve Man is a cookbook. It's a cookbook." Right? To Serve Man. So it's,
I absolutely remember that. I'm not sure where it came from, but yeah, I think it was a Twilight
thin
Zone.
alien,
But oh my
poking
God,
the guy in his little cell. It's like, "Make sure to eat. We want you nice and fat by the time you get to our planet." Yeah.
Well, yeah, because I was going to interrupt you and say, look at, you're only given, bad ET things, or attack and destruction. They could come down and say, "We are the angels come here to save you." We've still got the Antichrist story.
My own
out
take on
there.
it is that, there are so many different varieties of ET presence on the planet. from everything you see in terms of whistleblowers and secret government programs, the evidence is too overwhelming. And, it's just like with human beings. God made us all, gave us all free will, and there are good human beings and bad human beings. And there's some cultures that are highly advanced and some are primitive. Some are run by, organized crime and mafia, and some actually, have high humanitarian values. Some, you go to India, way up in the mountains, there's holy communities where, saints are deeply in communion with God. You've got genuine Christian communities, and it's the huge mix. Same thing to me on the extraterrestrial level. You've got lizards and baddies and goodies and people who have power and abuse it, and then you've got highly evolved fifth dimensional beings who kind of watch from a distance. They're honoring our free will. It's just like Star Trek with the prime directive: don't interfere with a species evolution. And yet when we ask for help, they're there to help. I like to believe, this is just what I would like to believe, that between angelics, high divine souls, the Christ, and highly evolved off-planet allies, along with the on-the-ground, boots-on-the-ground folks that we like to refer to as the Inner Light Network, the ILN. Yes, it does exist. It's the counterbalance to the cabal, and it is also infiltrated in all the same places: government, pharmaceuticals, military, industrial. The good guys have their infiltrators as well, and behind the scenes, they're a few steps ahead of the bad guys. I've seen sufficient evidence to convince me of that. So, hopefully some of these, there are some good off-planet races that are not going to plop down and try to get us to believe in some, savior scenario. Yeah, just surrender your freedom. You're all terrified now, but we've taken care of the bad guys. Just surrender us your freedom. Oh, by the way, you will need to take this shot. Oh, by the way, you will need to go through this shower. Not to worry. This is a special device that's going to cleanse you of all disease. Yeah. To serve man as a cookbook. So, yeah, we're just...
Well, my understanding of the extraterrestrial community, let's put it that way, is there is a prime directive. You cannot, they can't just come in here and do something like attack us or take us over or pretend they're something else. So if this happens, if you suddenly are being confronted with the fact that we're either under attack, which is not going to happen because there is a space force. It's been in existence for a very long time, decades, since at least the 60s, and probably, in the 40s they were probably already starting on it. It's very sophisticated, and they are not going to allow the dark side to pretend attack. My exhibit as proof of that was the situation a few years ago when a warning went out to the islands in Hawaii that there was a missile attack, and it went into people's cell phones. We're under attack. And then all of a sudden nothing happened. People freaked out, and then it was like, never mind. Well, it was the fact that, yes, there was a missile that was fired from a submarine, but it was exploded before it got to the islands. And there's actually video proof that that's what happened. Okay? So if they were willing to do... I don't even know how many times that they have tried to do these kind of things and been stopped. I've heard too many stories along the way. So what I'm saying here is that that's not going to happen. You think you're under attack, it's not going to happen. What you're seeing is
right, Project
holograms
Bluebeam
or something like that.
That kind of thing. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we are.
We're at the end of the
there just
showdown.
went. Well, anyway, I think this was a pretty cool show. And the Robert F. Kennedy Jr. speech in Berlin, I think, will be as historic as JFK's speech on the same spot. So, ich bin ein Chicagoan, but
Let's
I
hope.
will say ich bin Berliner, proudly with RFK Jr. God bless you. And anything else, Nancy, for closing words here?
Just everybody be safe, and what you focus on will become your reality. So if you want to have a really good outcome, focus on the words that Robert Kennedy speaks, and all those people out there speaking the truth, and knowing that just by identifying the truth and watching ourselves grow in maturity as not victims anymore, but active human beings with conscious
Not
minds.
to worry. God's in his
We're gonna
heaven.
win.
All's right with
Not
the
to
world. See you next time, folks.
Thank you for listening. May it be.
Let it